Time for some extended Rocket League news around the scene. Obviously, we just talked about previously in the week about how regionals are done. We're just waiting for the major. And because of that, trade window is about to begin, and people are kind of getting those motions set in place. And they didn't take long. We literally wrapped up the regional, and then the next day, they're like, this player's gone, and this team is leaving. And what is happening with Turbo and all the things that we've been speculating about. So very quickly, we're going to talk about these. The first one we're going to focus in is on DarkZero. DarkZero came in, picked up the 4 time, and has tried to find results that haven't really bet there. Alongside that, they then also sat and decided to bring up former RLCS analyst Gregan. And we're like, you know what? World-class coach has done some valuable things with Vitality. The issue is I don't think it matters what kind of supporting staff you build in, and it provides the perspective of DarkZero, maybe you guys should have looked at the results. Maybe you should have looked and hired a consultant or a scout like myself and talked about my thoughts on how I thought the roster was going to go. Because if you go back and look at my fall major predictions, before the season even started, I said at best DarkZero was going to be a top 16 team. Like we're talking 13 to 18 at best, and a gatekeeper team, which I don't think is disrespectful. But the reality is these new players coming in are better than ever, and the refinement process is tougher than ever. So realistically, I think Turbo's incredible, but unless you surround him with world-class talent, very likely you're not going to have those results you're looking for. So the difficulty is they wanted to have a long-term plan, and Gregan talks about this in his tweet longer, which I'll have linked in the description down below. But basically that the time and the cost in order to have a team, you need to be able to provide some sort of return on that investment when you're doing so. If I'm spending thousands upon thousands of dollars for a roster, a coach, and this and that, but we are not even making the main events to get the exposure that we get from a main event broadcast and the 40, 50, 60,000 viewers that are watching. We are just throwing money and burning it like Moist did in their announcement video with Ludwig, where they literally threw money into the fire. Because that's the reality of esports, is unless you are getting that exposure and able to leverage that into sponsorships and partnerships or create that fan base to buy your merch or whatever products you're putting out, you're literally just throwing and burning money. Gregan decided to choose DarkZero because even though having offers from other teams, this was something that allowed him to fund his personal projects, like the stuff I'm doing, like his podcast that he has going on, and it provided him security. You know, you hate to say it, but these are one of the things that we kind of saw coming. I figured the team's cap was at that point, and because of the competition being more fierce than ever, these are the realities of what's going on. It is very difficult to be a top 16 team, and being a team that plays in those close qualifiers is no slight. It is very tough to be top 24 in the RLCS right now in any region. So the fact that they are able to do that is great, but the reality is teams like Evil Geniuses, even when they do have a roster potentially going to the major, still don't have the financial backing to justify it. So it's really tough, and it makes me really wonder what the next steps are for his teammates between Creams and Turbo and everybody else. We saw a tweet that Turbo alluded to. We talked about it in the last show that I did as well, about how, Turbo, are you retiring? You're alluding to it, that maybe it's time to hang it up. Or are you going to find a new roster? Are you going to maybe go into some sort of content side of things? All I know is that we hope we find something that makes you happy, and that applies to everybody else who's LFT, because it's not just him. You're seeing it from ZPS. You're seeing it from all these players that are kind of on that bubble that are just trying to find a home, because ultimately I do think a lot of them have that potential. And you look at someone like Chronic. Chronic and 2Piece are prime examples. Together, they weren't that successful. Chronic goes to GenG, becomes on the best team in North America, and wins a major as a rookie. You see 2Piece go to Shopify Rebellion, and instantly that team's back in the conversation, now making top 8. So again, it's very difficult to count some of these teams out, but ultimately, 2 things to take away from it. Number 1, you hope that these players find a successful roster, a home, security. And the second thing, it really stinks to see DarkZero go from the RLCS. I hope they're back soon. I hope they find a roster that they want to pick up, because I do think teams like German Amigos are available, and I think they would treat you well. Another team that had really good offseason performances in the Sonics, primarily in the G1 Invitational, has now decided to part ways with Arju. Arju, if you guys don't know his history, came in as a replacement for Mouse Sports back in the day when it was like Cookser and Speed. Ultimately, he had a really great performance. He became the super sub. He was up there with the OG names of like Vafele, and most of you don't know who that is, and that's totally fine. That's for us OGs out there. He came in as a replacement for Taz back when he was on the Monkeys, before they were even Galaxy Racer or Misfits or anything like that, back when I was still casting them in the grid days, way back in the first season, so RLCS X, when they started doing the grid. So Arju came in, had a really big impact. He started asserting offense and creating opportunities for his teammates by really aggressive challenges. But not seeing him and Matane together anymore is kind of weird. Sonics obviously thanks him for his time, but Arju did have his own thoughts on it, talking about how he understood the decision because of his recent performances, and it made the most sense for the team. So a lot of respect for me to Arju for him being realistic about it, but I hope he uses that as a motivator to find a new roster when it comes to the trade window that starts in April. And last but not least for roster news, we've got Parka kicked from the French team I can't say. The FFX, I don't know what it is. I don't know how to say it. I've looked it up. It doesn't help. It's just a bunch of letters. Why is there an X in there? I don't get it. Either way, their results are kind of back and forth. It started off with them going 9th to 11th in a closed qualifier, and they went 2 and 3 before they just barely missed out on that top 16. They also went 12th to 14th and went 1 and 3 in a closed qualifier, and then in their third and final one, they actually made top 8 before they lost to Oxygen 04. They got 4K in prize pool and everything else. So it is crazy that the team, after the best success they've ever had, decided to kick one of their players. And that is the reality of what is happening with these roster changes. While you are starting to see success, a lot of these teams are no longer hanging around with the friends. They are making the tough business decisions, and I hope people don't take it personally. They got to do what's best for them to look for long-term success rather than, yeah, we're starting to improve, but are we improving at the rate? And even if we do stay the same, that's still not enough to go to a major. So tough realities, and it's only going to get worse because there's some things that haven't been announced yet that I'm excited for you guys to all find out about that have to do with scheduling stuff that is going to really flip the script when it comes to the rosters and contract negotiations and everything else, which hopefully we can talk about real soon.